on there, YouTube. In my last video, I talked about the fact that I'm going to be making a video response to That Dude in Blue's video, where he talks about the Pontiac Fiero. The title of his video was Why the Pontiac Fiero is Terrible Yet So Great. And he made some good points in that video, but he was also wrong on a few things. Not that it's a huge deal, but I just kind of want to set the record straight. He was driving a 1986 Fiero, which was right in the middle of the run of production for these cars. Oh, there goes a fucking Lamborghini. Holy shit. Didn't expect to see that. So, yeah, he was driving a 1986 model. As he talked about, Pontiac Fiero was kind of a parts bin car. They took parts off of other cars. Corvair brakes, Citation suspension, if I'm not mistaken. Part of the fact of them being parts bin cars is due to the fact that GM kind of rushed. Not only did they rush the timeline to get these cars out, but they weren't given the budget. They weren't given the budget to design their own motors, specifically for the Fiero, or even to put work into decent motors to make them fit in this car. So the engine code for the Pontiac Fiero, the V6, is the L44. It's a 2.8 liter V6, and it's the same motor that they were putting in the postal vans, and I believe they put them in the Z24 Cavaliers also a little later on. The fact of the matter is, they're a junk motor, and when they were trying to make them fit in the Fiero, they shortened, or they made the oil pan a bit smaller. So that, combined with the lack of maintenance that people were just lacking to do, is the reason why some of the 4 cylinders caught fire. I can't tell you the engine code for the 4 cylinder, but there were only 282 Fieros that ever actually caught fire, and they were the 4 cylinder models. Like I said, it was mostly because lack of maintenance. I want to touch on a few points that he made where he's just wrong, or maybe he's exaggerating for the point of his video or whatever. But about 30 seconds into the video, he states that the Pontiac Fiero is a dangerous car. It's not. Back then, you can look all this stuff up. Pontiac Fiero was one of the highest safety rated cars you could get. It was only behind a Volvo. It's still safe by today's standards. These doors are super strong for side impact ratings. There's so much crumple space, so much dead space between the front and the rear of the driver. For any collision, you're pretty protected. I can't tell you how many images I've seen of these cars hitting trees or other objects, and the car is just destroyed, but the driver's fine, because these cars are fairly safe. They're not dangerous. The only safety feature that I can see people kind of being upset about that these don't have is airbags. There's no airbags in these cars, but it's also from the 80s. He also states that the Pontiac Fiero is an unbalanced car. That's just not true. It's a fairly good weight distribution. Obviously, a bit more of the weight's in the back because it's a mid-engine car. But what he might have been referring to is what they call snap oversteer. He talks about how these cars oversteer a lot. And the snap oversteer in these cars, it was a little bit to do with the 84 through 87 models. Like I said, they had the more poorly designed suspension. They did a whole complete revision for the 88 model year. But the snap oversteer was kind of, if you're going hard into a corner on the gas and you let off, something about, Don't know the exact reason, but the weight transfer of getting off the gas kind of makes the rear end snap around a little bit, and almost it starts an oversteer situation, which can be a little bit dangerous if you're not prepared for it or expecting it. So that's that point. At one point he says that the Pontiac Fiero was marketed as a mid-engine sports car. No, it was never sold as a sports car. It was marketed as an economy car. That's exactly what it was supposed to be. As long as these cars have had the maintenance done and everything's running properly, these cars can easily get 25, 30, 35 miles to the gallon. They're not a sports car. With 140 horsepower, they were never marketed as a sports car, and it's just not true. But that leads to the point where he mentions the motor swaps. These cars have tons of motor swaps done to them. I'm actually working on one in one of mine, that my 88 Fiero, that hasn't officially been introduced on the channel yet. But hopefully it will be soon, because I've got to get that car back in my possession. Long story short. So there's that. He mentions that the Pontiac Fiero has a tight cockpit. Yes and no. You do have this center console, which kind of limits your elbow room. It's just something that's not normal for most cars, but because of the fact that this car is mid-engine, this center area is where your throttle cable runs, your brake booster vacuum line runs off the motor, your shift cables run there, a little bit of wiring runs there, because the motor's not in the front, so that stuff has to go somewhere. But in terms of a small cockpit, it's not necessarily true. There's plenty of room in here. He mentions how the car that he was driving sways back and forth on the road. Part of that, there is some truth to that, but again, he's mostly wrong. Part of it is because these cars are extremely narrow. These cars take up maybe 2/3 of a lane. They're very narrow, so they don't sit in the divots in the road where most car tires have kind of worn a groove in there. Plus, he was driving an 86. I'm going to keep making this point, and it's the 84s through the 87s did not have a good suspension. Again, it was they were parts bins cars, so they were taking parts off of other cars to try and build that car cheaply and within the budget. But for 1988, they completely redesigned the suspension for these cars to the point where they handle fantastic compared to the earlier cars. So you really lost that issue. The cars don't weave or sway back and forth, or they're fantastic for the 88s. A big issue for him seemed to be, for some reason, the fact that the car he was driving had a 4-speed. Okay, it was the 80s. Yes, they hadn't completely gotten rid of the 4-speeds yet. Yes, the body style of the car that he was driving was a GT, but you could not get the GT with a 4-speed. So that tells me that the car that he was driving was either rebodied, which they just put the GT quarter panels on the back of an SE car, which retained the 4-speed, or there's a transmission swap in there somewhere, because the GT should not have a 4-speed. The car I'm driving right now is an 87, has a 5-speed. It's the GT. My first Fiero was an 86 SE with a 4-speed. So if he had been driving a true GT, he would have had himself a 5-speed. But does make a good point in regards to the pedal placement. Unless you have like dwarf-sized feet, you're not going to be able to heel toe in this car. I have size 13 shoes, and you can't even consider heel toeing. There's just not enough room. All three pedals are way too close together for any of that sort of stuff. It's just the way it is. Without some custom fabrication and moving some stuff, some custom lines and everything, you're not. I don't see people heel toeing in these things. Like I said, you got to have some small feet. That being said, I mentioned the fact that I'm doing a motor swap in a 1988 Fiero. I'm hoping to introduce that car on the channel shortly. It's been undergoing this motor swap for way too long now. I'm not going to get into that right now, but hopefully it'll be done in the spring, if not sooner. So that being said, That Dude in Blue, this is my official invitation to you. When my car is finished, you are more than welcome to come drive it, come thrash on it, beat the crap out of it. All you gotta do is find yourself up here in upstate New York. It's getting a 3.8 liter supercharged 6-cylinder. It's gonna retain a 5-speed transmission. Welcome to come drive it, and it's been completely torn down to the frame and rebuilt by yours truly. So you'll be able to see how not only a 1988 Pontiac Fiero drives, but one that's been completely refreshed, all new bushings, all new bolts, and completely redone, like I said. Appreciate or got some sort of enjoyment or content out of this quick little video vlog thing. If you guys like it, maybe we'll talk about some other stuff some different time. But that's just a video that I had to make. Maybe it's a little cheesy, but I felt like I just had to talk about Fieros. I feel like I just had to clear that up. So I just wanted to clear that up about the Pontiac Fiero. Not that it's a huge deal, but I know that Dude in Blue has a very successful following on YouTube, and I wanted to prove some of his misconceptions wrong, or just maybe not even prove him wrong, just make it known that what is accurate and what's not. So once again, That Dude in Blue, you're more than welcome to come and drive. Well, more than welcome to come and drive one or both of my cars. I hope you enjoyed this quick little video. If you like what you've seen, there's that Ferrari or Lamborghini again. We're gonna chase him down here. We're gonna chase him down. Hey, we saw a Lamborghini today, so it means in my life I've seen a couple Ferraris, I've seen one Lamborghini. It's a good day. Thanks for watching.